We're about to begin our second session for the morning. Again, if our guests could please take their seats, we are about to begin our second session.
So much, everybody. Great to see you. Two of my heroes. Jean Tweng is here with me. She's talking this afternoon. I have a slide this afternoon which starts, "Oh, Jean." Anyway, and so we're pleased to be here with the other great hero of mine, who's John Haidt, who should be here. Could we see him? Hopefully we'll see him. I can see him. Can we see him? Let's be big. He's tiny now. Can we make him big? Please, can we make him big? Well, John, I'll talk first, and then we'll try and make him big. John's the Thomas Cooley Professor of Ethical Leadership at NYU Stern School. I'm going to say two things. I love his book, because I come to Jean later. I'm going to have her book, and I have John's book, which is great. But there's a couple of things that I really like in it, and I think John will like them too. Haidt shows how the play-based childhood began to decline in the 1980s and how it was finally wiped out by the arrival of the phone-based childhood in the early 2010s. And the last thing, I think John will like this, and hopefully we're going to see you, John. You're about a tiny corner, but it's coming. John Haidt is a modern-day prophet disguised as a psychologist. So that's where we are, and we're hopefully going to see him. Please help, please.
She's working on it.
He's coming. He's not there yet. Hello, John.
All right. Yes. Hello, Danny. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear
Does
you.
the audience hear
Yes.
We can't really see you yet. They can hear you nicely.
Okay.
You can sell your book, or walk around and chat to people.
All right. Well, I'll start talking in a few seconds, and then let's hope that
yeah.
the video shows, because I do need to show slides. I have a great story to tell you.
I'm sorry about this. We are desperately trying to get you fully zoomed up here. Chat amongst yourselves. Sorry.
Well, I'll start with just
Why don't
an
you start,
introduction.
John, and then we'll see.
If
If
the
you can
audience is
start,
all
we
in
can
their
hear you.
seats. Let's
Please
get
start.
going. Which is that I'm so sorry that I can't be here with you all today. I do all my teaching on Mondays and Tuesdays, so it just wasn't possible to come up to Hanover. But I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to present by Zoom, because what I'll be talking about is a set of collective action problems that I think are causing a global destruction of human flourishing. And the way to respond to it is with collective action. And so to have so many public health figures and so many people involved with the United Nations, I think the United Nations is able to
There
is
you
able
are.
to spread
We see
ideas
you.
around the world. All right, now you see
We can
me.
see you.
Okay. And wait, and I assume everything I just said already was heard, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was so excited when Danny showed me the program. I can't believe how the program is amazing because it's covering so many things that are part of this loss of human flourishing of young people, including community, and just so many aspects of declining mental health. So today I'm going to talk about what I think is the largest single reason why mental health got so much worse in the early 2010s in the developed world. And then as Danny has shown, it actually a few years later began dropping elsewhere. And of course, all credit to Jean for being the first one who raised the alarm, despite a lot of people attacking her and saying, there's no evidence, it's just correlation. Well, the evidence is in, and I'll show you a rundown of it today. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and I think I have a way to tell the story that I think will make it really clear what is going on. So I'm going to share desktop 3. I'll share sound in case we get to the short video. Okay, here we go. All right, Jean, just give me a thumbs up if you see my title screen. Oh yes, I can see it behind you. All right, all good, okay. So I want to start by introducing the metaphor of trees or tree roots, which are great metaphors for neurons. You can see the way that these tree roots grew out from this tree, and their growth was structured by the environment that they found. In this case, tiles where the water was just between the tiles. So imagine tree roots growing guided by the environment. Here's a tree that grew guided by a tombstone, a Civil War era tombstone, and I guess the tombstone scratched the bark 100 years ago, and the tree began to grow around the tombstone. Now, I'm doing this because I'm going to focus on adolescence. Adolescence is a period of very rapid growth, physical growth, and neuronal change. The brain is rewiring itself into the adult form. And we know that when we change, we suddenly bring this technology into our lives. It's with us all the time. We know that it's hurting us adults. I've had pinched nerves. I'll never know whether it was from my phone or what. But even as adults, we're suffering. Imagine children growing hunched around their phone. We know that this is warping eyeballs. Eyeballs are getting longer around the world. As children spend more and more time on smartphones and less time outside, this is thought to be the major reason for the rise in myopia. So our eyeballs are, in a sense, growing around our phones, which make it harder for us to see. We're literally becoming short-sighted. And then, of course, as Surgeon General Murty and others noted, screen time harms sleep, and as we all know, sleep, if kids are getting less sleep, this is going to have so many knock-on effects. So the physical health effects, just the physical health effects of the transition to the phone-based childhood, including less exercise, more obesity. So I think that in a very real sense, children born after 1995, that is Gen Z, they went through puberty on smartphones and social media. That is my definition of Gen Z. Their brains have been growing around their phones very much in the way that this tree grew around this tombstone. That is the story that I want to tell you today. My book can be summarized as a tragedy in 2 acts. In Act 1, we lost the play-based childhood gradually. Now, I should note that this happened all over the Anglo countries, even in Anglo countries that didn't have much crime. It didn't happen as much in Northern Europe, so this part of the story is not quite as universal. But it is happening across the West. Children are getting less and less freedom as everything moves online. But Act 2, we now know, is universal. It's even happening in the developed world. Wherever children have the internet in their pocket, wherever children have the internet with them, it moves to the center of their life. And this happened in the Western countries. This happened between 2010 and 2015, very, very suddenly. I can summarize my whole book by saying we have overprotected our children in the real world, and we have underprotected them online. So this is the outline of my talk. I've already covered the physical harms. If it was just the physical harms, that would be a reason for us to take action. I mean, just what I've laid out, if humanity is getting short-sighted and sleeping less, if children are getting short-sighted and sleeping less, we should do something about it. But that's just the beginning. There's a lot more to come in this mass destruction of human potential. So the mental illness is the one that we first all got into, again, thanks to Jean calling attention to it because she knows these large longitudinal data sets. And what I got into it because I teach at NYU, I taught at the University of Virginia, and we all saw a change in the students. These were the rates of various mental illnesses on campus. In 2012, all of the students on American four-year colleges were millennials. Gen Z begins to arrive around 2013, 2014, and most of the rates of disability don't go up except for the yellow line, which is psychiatric disorders. That's the difference. Gen Z is suddenly much more mentally ill than the millennials. But it's not all mental illnesses. This is, again, college data, although we see similar trends for the broader population. In all the graphs I'm going to show you, there's no trend before 2010. Like from the late 90s to 2010, 2011, nothing is changing. And then this happens. So American college students are overwhelmingly coming in now for anxiety and depression. Something like a quarter, if you add them up, you're up in the realm of a third, are having serious mental illnesses, mental difficulties. And that's true outside of college populations as well. Some people say it's just changes in self-report, it's just changes in diagnostic criteria. But if that was the case, we wouldn't see it in behavior. We see the exact same curves in more objective behavior. So the CDC tracks why people enter hospitals, and these were the rates of hospitalization, or emergency room visits, I should say, for non-fatal self-harm. They were very low for the 10 to 14-year-old kids. Early teens did not used to cut themselves. But we enter this period of the Great Rewiring, 2010 to 2015, and the girls' rate more than quintuples. It's in suicide as well. It's complicated across countries, although we do see this across the Anglo countries. And what we see here is no real trend before 2012, and then it goes up, especially very sharp for girls. Boys might have started a little earlier, but we see a big increase in both suicide and self-harm. Now, my lab group, has gathered data wherever we have long-running studies across the Western world. We can show that this is happening. Just to give you one data point, data from the UK, self-harm for 13 to 16-year-olds from medical records. Again, no trend before 2010. And then in 2012, it's like someone throws a light switch. I suspect it happened in Menlo Park, California, and girls start cutting themselves. And Danny's amazing work, well, this is not Danny's data, but Danny has brought to us data from so many sources showing that this appears to be happening around the world, if not in exactly the same form. At least young people are becoming less happy, less flourishing, and that is happening wherever the internet is in kids' pockets. So that's the mental illness piece, which I thought was the biggest piece. Since the book came out, my book came out a year and a half ago, I've realized that that was wrong. There's actually a lot more going on, that the destruction is far greater than just the mental illness. So briefly, why is this happening? Now, if you have a synchronized global collapse in teen mental health, you might think, well, what happened around the world around 2012? Well, we were still in the financial crisis. But if we plot out, the black line is the unemployment rate. And you see the unemployment rate in the US went from 5 to nearly 10% in the space of 2 years. That was a disaster. What happened to youth mental health? Nothing. The orange and blue lines don't change. Then after 2010, America's recovering, the unemployment rate goes down, family finances are better, the stock market's going up, unemployment reaches historic lows. But that's the period when girls and boys get more depressed. So it just doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. It's not the global financial crisis. The only theory on the table, the only theory I have heard that can handle the international change is this one. We rewired childhood. It used to be based in the real world with play, and now all over the world, it's based largely on touchscreens. So to really show exactly what happened between 2010 and 2015, imagine that you were born in 1990. Imagine that you're a millennial. You went through puberty from, let's say, 2002 to 2008 would be the key years for your puberty. You went through puberty with a flip phone, or like this Motorola Razr, or a basic phone. There was no front-facing camera, no internet. It was a tool to communicate with your friends and family. Technology was helpful. But suppose you were born in the year 2000. Well, you begin puberty, let's say, around 2012. That's the key year when Americans, and especially teens, flip from mostly having basic phones to smartphones. 2010, we get the first front-facing camera. 2012, Facebook buys Instagram. All the girls go on it. So if you're born in the year 2000, that means that you went through puberty as a pawn in the attention economy. You were having your attention harvested by apps and interruptions and notifications. You were talking with strangers, even late at night while you were in bed. So it was a very, very different puberty, and the results are very, very different. I can show you that more intuitively. Childhood used to be outdoors with a lot of excitement. Our best memories of childhood for most of us older people are running around with our friends doing things outside. In that bottom frame, you see how if you're with your buddies and an extraterrestrial comes to Earth, you don't have to go tell adults. You pick them up, you have adventures. That's ET. But childhood now is very solitary because if you want to play with your friends and you're a boy, you can't go over to their house. What are you going to do? You need to go to your house. That way you can play multiplayer video games with your friends. I can show you the Great Rewiring in another format. This is the American Time Use Study. How much time do Americans of different ages spend with their friends outside of work and school? The answer is that 15 to 24-year-olds used to spend a lot of time with friends, whereas older people didn't. They're married, they've got jobs. But what happens after 2012? The amount of time plummets. In fact, the 2019 data point is before COVID. The 2020 data point is after COVID. And as you can see, COVID bent the curve for the older ages. You see it goes down in the last data collection. But Gen Z, the young people, were social distancing as fast as they could after 2012, and they were almost done in 2019. 2020 just finished the job. And of course, even that overestimates their time together, because time with friends often is time where you're each just on your own screen, but standing near your friends. So that's what I think is happening. Now, here is what I think is actually the biggest destruction. There are many, many others I could point to, but this one has so many ramifications for education, for attention, for creativity, and for the workplace. So let's go into it. 2 years ago, the data journalist Derek Thompson noticed that there's evidence accumulating that kids are getting dumber, or at least I should say reading, academic achievement is literally going down. And so in America, we've got the NAEP, the National Assessment of Education Progress. We were making progress from 1971 through 2012. It's been a long slog, slow, steady progress. And in 2023, when the first post-COVID results came out, people saw this and they said, oh my goodness, look how terrible COVID was, COVID restrictions, or kids were out of school, look how much they dropped. And if it was due to COVID, then you'd expect a recovery in 2024. But nobody seemed to notice that the drop didn't begin in 2020. It began in 2012. 50 years of progress ended in 2012. But it'll come back, right? Once kids come back in school, it'll come back, but it didn't. So here's what happened. We look at the same data with the 2024. If we look at the top scores, we look at the top 25%, the most able students, the students who are able to concentrate, who have good executive function, their drop only kicked in 2020. So that looks like COVID. And they're recovering. So the top 25% in ability, they seem to be doing okay. But the bottom 50%, their drop began after 2012. By 2015, they're already dropping. They drop through COVID and they drop after COVID. As you can see, even from 2023 to 2024, they continue to drop. And it's the same thing for reading scores, exactly the same story. So this is an educational catastrophe. If you care about equity, this is one of the worst things ever to happen to educational equity. And there are signs that this is happening around the world. The PISA test, which measures academic ability of 15-year-olds in about 35 countries, no trend in scores before 2010, and then it drops around the world. And this is work I did with Jean Twenge. We found embedded in PISA, there are 6 items about belonging at school, like I often feel lonely. Do you agree or disagree with that? And what we see is, as always, no trend before 2012, no sign of a problem. And then all of a sudden, by 2015, students around the world, not so much in Asia, but everywhere else, they say they're lonelier in school. I wonder why. If everyone's on a phone, you're not talking to anyone, you're not laughing with anyone, you're not playing, you're just scrolling in between classes and at lunch. Our kids are inundated with interruptions. A lot of them, my students, they get a notification every time they get an email. They don't seem to understand that they should reduce the number of notifications. They don't want to miss anything, so they're constantly interrupted. And many of us are observing that even at elite schools like NYU, our students have trouble reading books. How can you pay attention to a book? It doesn't scroll. Pages can be boring, and then what are you going to do? As one of my students said, I open a book, I read a sentence, I get bored, I go to TikTok. So this is a catastrophe. If we lose books, even from elite students, If the next generation stops reading books, all the accumulated wisdom of humanity is lost. But it's even worse than that. I was focusing on the kids so much, I was not really paying any attention to the adults. But John Byrne Murdoch put some studies together. This is the Monitoring the Future study, so this is high school seniors. And here you see they report how often in the last 30 days have you had difficulty thinking or concentrating. You can see there's a slight increase from 1990 to 2010. And how often have you had trouble learning new things? There's no increase at all from 1990 to 2010. And then we enter the Great Rewiring, and this happens. So at least our high school seniors are suddenly saying, around 2015, 2016, they're suddenly saying, you know, it's really hard to think. It's really hard to learn new things. I wonder why. And this is what really freaked me out, was when Murdoch brought in this study from an OECD study. This is the measure of functional illiteracy and innumeracy. Let's look at the light blue. That's, can you read 3 paragraphs and then answer some really simple questions about what you just read? And this is the percent who cannot do it. So in the US, it was around 19% were functionally illiterate on this test back in 2004, and that actually dropped, maybe to 17% by 2011, 2012. And then this happens. The rate goes way, way up. Adults are finding it harder to read 3 paragraphs because it takes a long time to read 3 paragraphs. Scrolling rewards you within seconds. You shouldn't have to focus that long to get a reward. As Byrne Murdoch says, we appear to be looking less at the decline of reading per se and more at a broader erosion in the human capacity for mental focus and application. This is a complete disaster for humanity. We're getting dumber exactly as our machines are getting smarter and taking over more areas of life. But that's what's happening. Very briefly on girls versus boys, because they take different paths through the Great Rewiring. For girls, and this is where Jean and I started, social media was the clearest culprit. And at the end of this process, it is still the clearest culprit. There's a lot more going on for girls. It's not just social media. But social media alters girls' development and social relationships and moods and identities so powerfully, more powerfully than it does for boys. I won't read all of these, but you can see there are multiple pathways of harm. And as Surgeon General Murty said, girls, young people who are on for more than 3 hours a day have at least double the risk of depression, and for girls, it's actually closer to triple. So there are many pathways of harm for girls. The boys' story is less clear. And I think this is really important because in the long run, I actually think our boys are being more harmed by the phone-based childhood. As Richard Reeves showed us in his book of Boys and Men, boys have been retreating from the real world since the 70s. This problem isn't new in 2012. But the virtual world has been welcoming them, pulling them in, getting better and better video games, better computers, better porn. And once porn becomes high definition and available always, and any possible kink the algorithm will recommend to you gets sent to our boys, it's very addictive. But usually around 10 to 15% of boys have an overuse problem for each of these technologies. The multiplayer video games seem to connect people, but when the boys got on them, they got lonelier. So for boys, it's not just social media. For boys, the way to think about it is that once they all had an iPhone in their pocket, it was as though we said it's open season on boys' dopamine systems. Companies, you can compete to hook them. And the video game companies were first in, and they've carefully titrated the degree of reinforcement. They've got our boys on variable ratio reinforcement schedules. So the boys start with getting addicted to video games. It moves on to porn when they get a little older. I can't believe they're flooded with nicotine products. That also is addiction that runs through dopamine. There's marijuana is everywhere, also includes dopamine. And then when they get a little older, they can start betting on sports, and now they can bet on sports every day and hundreds of times during every game. And even investing has been gamified. So our boys are becoming addicted to a number of technologies. And as Anna Lemke says, an addiction researcher at Stanford, if you become addicted to any one thing, it changes your reinforcement, the parts of your brain that handle reinforcement and learning, and you're now more easily addictable to everything else. So I think we've really done a number on our boys, and in the long run, we can expect boys to keep going down. Girls are rising relative to boys. It's great that they're rising in absolute terms, but this should not be happening at the expense of our boys, and there's no reason why it needs to be. The boys are going through a different path. And I haven't even begun to talk about what happens to boys online on forums and chat groups that radicalize them. So girls and boys take a different path through the Great Rewiring, but they end up in the same pit of despair. This is a question from Monitoring the Future. Life often feels meaningless. What percent agree with it or strongly agree? And the answer is that from the 90s through 2010, it was, 17%, and it actually goes down a bit to maybe 14%. So, actually things are getting a little better as the millennials cycle through high school. And then we enter the Great Rewiring, and all hell breaks loose. Boys and girls end up in a pit of despair, more than twice as likely to say, yeah, life often feels meaningless, because it is. If you're spending 5 hours a day on social media, you're not doing anything. Your life actually is meaningless. We've got to stop this. Now, just very briefly, one of the reasons we haven't done anything is because there's a debate in the academic literature, as there always is, over media effects. The most prominent voices in this since the mid to late 2010s have been Candace Odgers, who says we've searched, there are no large effects. All we find is a mix of no, small, and mixed associations. And Andrew Shabilsky, who says that the damage from social media is exactly as big as the damage from eating potatoes, which is essentially zero. So there are some. This is what the academic world does. We have these debates, but Jean and I have been compiling the evidence, and we think the evidence is now overwhelming. And there's so many different kinds that are converging. So Zach Rausch and I are putting this all together in a paper that we have drafted for the World Happiness Report, the 2026 World Happiness Report. The 2024 one looked at the decline in youth well-being and concluded that it's real. Now, the upcoming issue is going to look at whether social media is a major cause, and what we can do about that. And so Zach and I have been assembling 7 different lines of evidence, all reaching the conclusion that social media is harming kids. So just very briefly, the first line of evidence is what the victims say. Does it matter if the kids say it's hurting them? Is that evidence? Yeah. If kids in Britain and America and other places say social media is hurting us, well, that's evidence. It's not proof, but it's evidence against social media being safe. Social media is not safe for kids, and the kids are telling us that. Suppose that a crime was committed, there was a victim, the victim was injured, the victim had said he did it, and then there were eyewitnesses, the parents. The parents are seeing what's happening to the kids. The parents say he did it. Social media did it. This smartphone and social media life that my son started at the age of 12. This is what did it. Parents say that social media use is the largest reason why there is the largest thing that has a negative impact on their children's mental health. That's number one. But look, the rest of the next 5 are all ones that are amplified by kids being on social media. Bullying, low self-esteem, lack of sleep. School workload actually counts because kids have a lot of trouble doing their homework because they're always disrupted by social media. There's not enough time in the day or attention to do their homework. Line 3. What if the accused, the kids say he did it, and then the person accused actually confesses? What if we have all kinds of internal documents from TikTok, which we do, and what if TikTok employees say in their private email messages and studies that compulsive usage correlates with a slew of negative mental health effects? What if TikTok employees say that their product has baked into it compulsive use? That's what they're aiming for. That's what the design does. Same thing for Snapchat. Snapchat is really well tailored for drug dealers and sextortionists. The messages disappear, so people feel safer to do risque things. And the data really, truly disappears from Snapchat servers. So if a drug dealer wants to sell drugs to a kid online, this is the best place to do it. The other platforms might save the communication. And Snapchat knows that in 2022, they were getting 10,000 user reports of sextortion, not per year, per month. So hundreds of thousands just reporting to Snapchat, probably a lot more than that who didn't report, and that's just Snapchat. So there is a global epidemic of sextortion, which it's mostly aimed at 14 to 17-year-old boys. Dozens of them are known to have killed themselves. It's probably thousands more who have killed themselves. But because the parents can't get into their phone or into their Snapchat, we just never know why the kid was fine at breakfast and then he hanged himself at 2 o'clock in the morning that night. So those are 3 lines of evidence, but there's 4 others, and this is where the debate is. There's not really a debate about the first 3. I don't think the researchers on the other side dispute the first 3 lines of evidence. They do dispute the correlational studies, but guess what? They're actually very consistent, and the sizes are about the same as many other things in public health risks. The longitudinal studies show that increases in use in social media are followed by increases in mental illness, not the reverse. The RCTs, and look, this is the gold standard, and the RCTs actually almost all do show that reducing your social media use reduces depression if they run for at least a week. The one contrary meta-analysis merged together studies that got people off for 1 day and for longer, and all kinds of other studies, and they just mixed everything together and found no effect. But when you focus on depression and you look at studies that go longer than a week, the experiments have spoken. And they find that reducing social media reduces depression. There are about 6 quasi-experiments, 2 different teams, including one of mine with Alec McLean, have found that all of the available quasi-experiments show that when high-speed high-speed internet came to a region and social media use increased, mental illness followed, especially for women. So as I said, we're going to have this up by the end of November, but you can find it after Babel. You can find our posts, our many posts that show our deep dive into all these lines of research. So my point is, do not believe the people who say, oh, it's just a correlation. There's no evidence of causation. No, there are 7 different lines of evidence, and several of them directly address the issue of causation. All right, now what can we do about it? Well, here's the amazing thing. I think this is one of the biggest public health emergencies we've ever faced because it appears like it's going to go on forever and ever unless we do something. It's hard to compare this to COVID or other things, but I think this is a global pandemic that is targeted. Well, COVID targeted the elderly. This is targeting the young. So the mass destruction of human flourishing over many decades, I think, could be one of the largest in human history. But amazingly, we can get out of it pretty quickly and for very little money. So what we've been doing in my team at The Anxious Generation, we've found, and I wrote this in the book, with 4 norms, we roll back the phone-based childhood. Every parent is stuck in a trap. Your 10-year-old says, Mom, everyone else has an iPhone. I need one. I'm being left out. They're making fun of me. So we're all in a collective action trap. And the way you solve that is with collective action. If we can set a clear norm that everyone can adhere to, even if only 2/3 adhere to it, well, then your kid is fine. Even if a few kids have a phone at 10, most of the kids are not going to have it till 14, honey. So, you're just going to have a flip phone until then. So I'll just briefly go through them. Norm number 1, only give a flip phone or simple phone. And it's working. Parents are rallying. Parents hate this stuff. They see what it's doing to their kids. They're signing pacts. They're going to wait until high school in the US or age 14 internationally. The second norm is no social media before 16. It is wildly inappropriate for minors to be talking with anonymous men around the world. And some of these men want money or sex from our children. How did we let this happen? How does anyone think that this is okay? So the obvious answer is just no. No, children should not be on these social media platforms. They're adult-only things. They're full of sex and violence and disgusting things. So let's let them get through puberty. Let's protect puberty. And this is actually working. Florida was one of the first jurisdictions to raise the age to 16, although everything in the US is held up in court, so we haven't actually gotten it yet. But thank God for Australia. They took the plunge. They started it in 2 of the states, and then they went national, and it's going to kick in on December 10th. So we're all really excited. Many jurisdictions, France, the EU, Denmark, a number of countries are in the process. They're going to follow along. So I think we're going to get a global norm of 16. Norm number 3, phone-free schools. This is the most spectacular success we've had. Teachers hate the phones. Imagine being a teacher when all your kids are watching TikTok, porn, and video games in class. You can't possibly teach. You'd want to quit. And this was rolled out. Governors jumped into action. They sent the copies of The Anxious Generation to each other, to their legislators. 19 states did the right thing and enacted bell-to-bell phone-free school policies. I'll just play you the first 30 seconds of this very grateful teacher in Alabama, social studies teacher. Let's see if you can hear it.
My school, my state, banned the phones. Banned the phones. Today, all of my students, 100% of them, took notes in my class, did their assignment, asked for help when they got stuck, and turned it in. And then when they were done, they talked to each other. Was it this easy the whole time? My school.
So teachers are dancing in the hallways. Teachers are so happy to have the kids back. And we're already seeing studies showing that the grades rise. But it's very important that you do it. You have to do it for the whole day, not just during class. About 19 states, unfortunately, did it only during class. So what does that mean? You're separating drug addicts from their drug 8 times a day. You're giving them back the drug 8 times a day. Of course, they're on it in between classes and at lunch. And the fourth norm is far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. Again, this is a very serious problem in all the Anglosphere countries, less so in Northern Europe, but it is a trend that seems to be happening in many parts of the world. Our goal is not just to remove technology from kids or reduce their use of predatory technologies. It's to restore childhood, a fun, exciting childhood in the world where kids are out having adventures, getting into conflicts, getting out of conflicts, learning to navigate. And this is happening. This is a little slower, but parents groups are organizing so that parents say, hey, we got 5 families here in this neighborhood. How about every Friday the kids just meet up and they do whatever they want? They go from house to house. They go down and buy ice cream. Let them ride bicycles. So this is really happening, and it's thrilling. It's just so beautiful to watch. All right, now to conclude, I want to go through, because we have this amazing audience, and we have a number of people from who are affiliated with the United Nations. I realized my team, Casey Mock on my team, who's an attorney who used to work in human rights, he pointed out that the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child actually has text that supports all 4 of these norms. So Article 32 says that the child, to recognize the right of the child to be protected from economic exploitation and performing any work that is likely to be hazardous. Well, why are these companies worth trillions of dollars? It's because people are creating content. The kids are working in a content mine, toiling away to create content that the companies profit from. Creating this content and consuming this content is hurting our kids at an industrial scale. Hundreds of millions of kids are having their childhoods warped because they're working for the companies. States shall protect children from the illicit use of narcotic drugs. Well, that would be great. And if Snapchat makes it super safe and easy for any child to buy potentially fatal drugs, guess what? The number of drug overdose deaths goes way, way up. Phone-free schools. Article 29 says that the parties agree that the education of the child should be directed to the development of the child's personality, talents, and mental and physical abilities. It is not to be spent playing video games and watching porn and TikTok. So I think we have an obligation to restore education by getting the phones the hell out of school. More independence, free play, and responsibility. The UN Convention says that children have a right to engage in play and recreational activities. We need to guard that. We need to get children back outside playing with each other, not always in adult supervised activities or sitting at home on a device. My team has come up with a policy menu to get more specific. So if our Substack is After Babel, I hope everyone here will subscribe to it. It's free, afterbabel.com. And Ravi Iyer wrote up this great post a few months ago advising, because we advise many governments around the world, and I urge you, if you represent a government, please contact us. Ravi and Casey will set up a call with your top policy people. We suggest these 4 higher level policy goals and then 8 specific principles under them. So I'll just go through that and then I'll stop. The most important one that we need government for is effective age verification age limits. In the real world, there are things that are not appropriate for children. We don't let children buy drugs, guns, alcohol, sex. Children are not adults. And on the internet, they can do whatever the hell they want as long as they say that they're 13. So this has to stop. But the interesting principle is a key point that is easy to enforce is account creation. We don't want to have to go through some procedure every time someone wants to watch a video on TikTok. What we want is to say that no child should be able to sign the terms of service and open an account on TikTok so that the algorithms can get to know them. The company can take their data. So this is what Australia did. They just said, right now, the global norm is you have to be 13 to sign the terms of service. You have to lie and say you're 13, I should say. But Australia said, how about we make it 16? And how about the companies have the obligation to enforce it, not the parents? We can't possibly enforce these unless we keep our kids away from the internet. Another principle is limit access to harmful design features. So don't just focus on social media. Focus on all of the technologies that are designed to addict our children. This especially will be protective for boys. A third principle is minimize the need to do age verification, like a process where someone shows a driver's license or has their face scanned. There's a necessary role for those, but there are lots of ways to reduce the need for it, especially if we have our devices coded to be a device owned by a minor, for example. And right now, we have to ensure right now, the companies have no liability. They've never been successfully sued for damages, no matter how many kids they kill. But we have to have countries enacting meaningful liability for their incredibly irresponsible behavior, especially for high-risk apps, for the apps that have the biggest death toll, like Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. I'm guessing character AI will be joining them very soon. Goal number 2, phone-free and distraction-free schools. As I said, it has to be bell to bell. Nothing else gives you the social benefits. And even the academic benefits are not that big when the kids are still addicted to their phones. It's only when you give them 7 hours a day away, they come back to life. You hear laughter in the hallways again. A related principle is that after the phones, we have to get most of the ed tech out of schools. The UNESCO has been great on this. They had this amazing report in 2023 saying that as far as they can tell, these devices are backfiring. As far as they can tell, academic performance declines when you give kids computers and iPads, and the decline is mostly linked to increased distraction and time spent on non-academic activities. Yes, it mostly ends at short videos, even if you ban everything other than YouTube. YouTube Shorts is TikTok. There's no real difference. So we've got to get rid of most of the ed tech. It was a mistake to put it in. There was no evidence that it was helpful. It's especially destructive for the younger ages. Get it out of elementary school. The third goal, safer online spaces, minimum design standards. It's just insane that Snapchat can exist as a platform that allows children on. It is so dangerous. It is designed with drug dealers and criminals in mind. It is designed to protect illicit activity, disappearing messages. They don't say it on the back end. They push you to connect with people you don't know. Principle 7, enable competition. Let users transfer to other platforms. The platforms are great at locking them in. But if we had competition, imagine there was a safer version of Snapchat. Imagine there was one that had identity verifications, that the only people on it were real people, that the company knew what their name was. You wouldn't have any more drug dealers. You wouldn't have any more sextortionists. So you could have a safe version of Snapchat, but you need to unlock the users and let them transfer to it. And finally, we all know that AI is coming in like a hurricane, and all of the mistakes we made over 15 years with social media, we're about to make again in the next 12 months with AI. And this Christmas, so many children are going to get a chatbot in a teddy bear or a toy, and they're going to fall in love with them, and they're going to have friendships with them. And we don't even know what these things really are. If you are in any way involved in policy in your country, please contact us. If you just scan this right now, I hope you can see it on the screen. If you scan that right now, it'll take you to our policy menu where we go through specific policies. We have links to actual bills in the US and elsewhere. And this is Ravi Iyer and Casey Mock. If you just remember policy at anxiousgeneration.com, that will reach Ravi and Casey. We're here to help you. We want to help you enact good policies. So this is my talk. I think we have enabled the greatest mass destruction of human potential when we put our kids on devices instead of on life. The solution is collective action, and I've laid out some of the policies where there are many groups working on this. My group is for now at anxiousgeneration.com. Alexa Arnold is running the movement. Our goal is to reverse the loss of the play-based childhood. To reverse the arrival of the phone-based childhood and to restore a play-based childhood, a childhood in real life. So let's work together. Here's where you can go for more information. And again, just email policy@anxiousgeneration.com. We'd be very glad to do a Zoom call with you and consult on what policies work, how you can craft them, what should your top priorities be, etc. And with that, I look forward. I hope we have at least a little bit of time to talk.
I think so. I think Gene's got a good job, mate. I think he can see us. Gene's going to ask a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask a couple, John. So, Gene, I think you have to look in there at him.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me and see me? Good.
I hear you and see you.
Awesome. So a couple questions come to mind. So, fabulous summary of the research and the policy. Really wonderful to see. So I think, as is often my purview, it's the nitty-gritty stuff that I think a lot of people might be wondering. So one question that I get very often, I'd love to hear your answer to, is, okay, we're going to verify age, but we need to verify age. We're going to raise the minimum age for social media to 16. And over I get, but how is it even possible? Like, how can that be done? And I have my own answer to that, but I'd love to hear yours, because I'm sure it's something a lot of people are wondering.
Sure. Well, the first thing is to realize that we need a norm. Right now, there's no norm, and we think it's difficult. This is an industry that can do anything. They know how old everybody is. They know when women are beginning their menstrual cycle. They collect so much data, they know. The US law is currently written so that as long as the person doesn't say that they're underage, the company's off the hook. So for the first thing we have to do right now, they are motivated to not know officially, and we need to motivate them to actually know. That's the first thing. And then it turns out that there's a lot of business on the internet, and a lot of it is limited to people over 18. So you can buy alcohol, you can gamble. There's a lot of things you can do on the internet where there is an age limit. So the industry already knows how to do age verification. 5 years ago when I started this, even 5 years ago, there was the Age Verification Providers Association. There were dozens of companies with all kinds of different methods. And the Australia law is written so that it specifically says you can't only ask for government ID. So that can be an option. Show me your driver's license. That's what some of them do. But you have to offer an alternative way. And so there are many already, and once they're motivated to do it, they're going to find many others. This is what the blockchain was supposed to do for us, enable this kind of verification of a fact without giving up any private information. So there are multiple methods, and as you saw on a slide, a simple method that would at least help parents who want to keep their kids off is just if Apple could solve this tomorrow, if they would just be able to put a mark on the phone or on the operating system when it's installed to mark this as a minor's phone. That's what Pornhub says they want. Pornhub wants to send down a ping and say, is this device, a person who's old enough? And if so, yes, otherwise no. And so that wouldn't solve the problem because you could still get to porn online, but at least that would help parents keep their kids off of dangerous sites. So there's so many ways to do it. The industry is already doing it. These companies have gotten away with murder, literally with murder, for a long time now. And yeah, there will be some challenges, but I think we need to try.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing I'm curious about is the data is still emerging on the impacts of the bell-to-bell bans on phones, so the phone-free schools. And there's a few studies that have come out, and I'm hearing the same argument that I heard early on about social media and mental health in general. Oh, yeah, there's an effect, but it's small, and it's too small to matter. So I'd love to hear your take on the studies that we have so far on phone-free schools and their impacts. And I have my own answer to this, but I'd love to hear yours about, are they having an effect? How much data do we have? My understanding is not much, but there are a few studies. What's your take on those studies?
Sure. So there are different kinds of evidence. The kind that we really need, when I first met, when Vivek Murthy reached out to me and you, 3 or 4 years ago, I told him the study that we need is a random assignment of whole schools to have a phone-free policy or not. It has to be the whole school.
Yeah.
And no one ever did that. And I talked with governors and I pitched that. No one ever did that. It would be a very hard study. So that would be the gold standard. No one ever did it. No one will do it. Instead, we have a few crappy studies, like there was a study published in The Lancet where they compared 5 schools that had one policy to 10 schools that had a slightly different policy. But that was garbage. A study just came out about Florida. They found an effect. Yes, it was said to be small, but that was just a classroom ban. Classroom bans are only marginally effective. You only get the benefits when you have a full thing. So we don't have the gold standard study of multiple schools that went, but we will at the end of the school year. So many schools, so many states initiated over the last legislative session. It kicked in September. So by June, we will be able to compare the states and the schools that went fully phone-free against the states that only did it during class, against the states that didn't do anything. And I predict we're going to see big differences there. But you know what? When it comes to public health, some of our critics act like the only evidence that counts is if it's published in an academic journal. Well, there are many kinds of evidence. And if you survey teachers, and if the teachers almost unanimously say, thank God, the kids are learning, they're paying attention. Like, is that evidence? Yes, that is evidence. So, yeah.
So let me ask you a question. The 24-year-olds or 23-year-olds at Dartmouth, it would have been great if they'd have listened to you, and we knew all about this 10 years ago, but we didn't. And so now we have 23, 24-year-olds who've been scarred by this whole process. And Jean and I were just chatting earlier. The big thing we see now is the really big decline in the well-being of young workers. So obviously we say, oh, it would have been great if we'd have taken the smartphones away from them when they were 2016, and Haidt and Twenge would have been listened to 10 years ago. But we have a problem. And we have a problem which is, okay, we have this huge generation of children and now young adults who are struggling. And I know you and I said the other day, this is a really hard problem, perhaps even harder than what you've talked about, but we need to think about that. And we're going to think later about it today. I'd just like your thoughts on it. What do we do about, the generation who didn't read, the anxious generation?
Yeah. So I have bad news and good news, and I'll start with the bad news. My thesis in The Anxious Generation is let's keep our eye on puberty. As the brain is rewiring, it's a sensitive, we know it's a sensitive period for cultural learning. 9 to 15 is when your culture gets in. If you moved to someplace when you were, 15 or 16, it's too late. So we know this is a sensitive period. What that means is that the generation that missed out on sleep and play and sunshine and books and all that stuff, they went through their sensitive period, and it's now too late. So I think we are going to see a permanent echo of diminished potential in those born between 1996 and, 2010, 2015. I'm not sure where it will stop. So that's the bad news. They're not going to snap out of it. They're not going to suddenly return to the level they would have been at. They're not going to suddenly match where the millennials were when the millennials were 40 years old. That's the bad news. And that's really, really bad news. The good news is that I can tell you that especially for those who are still in their early 20s, it's not too late. And what I mean by that is I teach a course at NYU called Flourishing, and it used to be I let the students make up projects to, we read positive psychology, what can you do to make your life better, to become smarter, stronger, and more sociable. But I discovered over the years that unless we start with the social media piece, unless we start with their digital habits, there's no point in doing anything else. So many of them are on for 3 to 5 hours a day, wasting their time. It's damaging their attention span, and it makes it difficult for them to ever go out with friends. So they work on it, and they work on it together. And again, as I heard, I just turned in for a bit of the last session, as Vivek Murthy said, if you do it together, this is a collective action problem. So if groups of young people come together and say, you know what, we're just all going to delete TikTok. It's a complete useless piece of garbage. Let's all just delete TikTok. Let's start there. When they do things together, they can have amazing effects. So it's not too late for individuals if they make an effort and they make it collectively. But I'm afraid we just don't have that much leverage over people in their 20s as we do over kids who are 8 or 9 years old.
Do you think, I heard you use the word, do things together. Economists are interested in who people compare themselves to. Think about you as a kid. You compared yourself probably to your neighbors, your sisters, your school pals. But in a sense, and this applies both to the young and to the young adults, maybe what this has done is it's changed people's comparator groups, right? I mean, in a sense, I was just thinking about, in relation to your answer, we might even be able to think about with young adolescents, there's people who are young adults who are 22, 23. In some sense, they're comparing themselves to unrealistically, right? They're comparing, somehow or other, they're comparing themselves to the Kardashians, and they say, I've got two Gucci bags, but I want 6. But do you see the point? I think the comparator group story is really important, and perhaps there's something there we can think about for young adults. I don't know, maybe Jean can chip in on that too. Comparator groups seem important.
No, absolutely. So, television did that to some extent, and our critics today say, oh, it was the same with television. And young women saw all kinds of models and airbrushed models, but those were adult women that they didn't know. Suddenly, once you're on Instagram, you're seeing other girls in your school who look amazing, because
Right.
they've carefully posed it, they've used filters. So I think that's the reason why the curves for the girls are often much sharper than for boys. For girls, it's like no sign of a problem 2011. By 2013, it's off to the races. So the girls are plunged into that social comparison. The boys, it's a little bit more gradual based on addiction, I believe. So yes, I think this is a huge part of the problem is the social comparison. And one of the main things that kids are doing in puberty is, well, they're changing their bodies from the child form to the adult form. But they're also changing their identities from the child form to the adult form. The adult identity is emerging. Go back to Erik Erikson, go back to any developmental psychology theory. This is the worst possible time to immerse them in millions of little bits of programming, each of which comes rated. This is this prestigious, this is less prestigious. I mean, the guys who designed this, they literally did it intentionally to hack the prestige system. And I cover that in chapter 2, Prestige Biased Learning. So again, the argument is we are completely insane if we give puberty over to social. It's just completely insane. Like, if we're not going to protect our kids during puberty, let's just give up. Like, there's no point.
John, I think it's time we have to stop. You're a great inspiration. Really, you are. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone. We will reconvene with me in an hour, and we're moving down the road to the Hanover Inn. So thank you, everybody. We'll start again at 1. Thanks. Good one, John. Thank you. Brilliant. That was good. That was great. I was worried the technology wasn't going to work, and it kind of did. That's really cool stuff. Yeah, so we